even incredible offer. A visionary billionaire wants to send your 10-year-old child to be among the first settlers on Mars. The journey is safe, but the environment is entirely new. Mars has only 38% of Earth's gravity, and it lacks a magnetic field to protect against cosmic radiation. No one knows the long-term effects this alien world will have on a developing child's bones, brain, or body. Worse, the company behind the mission has done no child-specific safety research and doesn't even require your explicit consent. A simple checkbox from your child will suffice. Would you let them go? Of course not. It sounds like madness. But what if this isn't a mission to Mars? What if it was happening right here, on Earth, in our children's pockets? In his groundbreaking and urgent book, The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt argues that we have, in effect, sent our children to Mars. We have plunged them into a radically new, disembodied, virtual world without understanding the consequences. Haidt presents a powerful and deeply researched case that the staggering rise in adolescent anxiety, depression, and self-harm that began in the early 2010s is not an accident. It is the direct result of a great rewiring of childhood. This rewiring stems from two monumental mistakes we made. With the best of intentions, we began overprotecting our children in the real world while simultaneously underprotecting them in the virtual one. Today, we will unpack the evidence behind this crisis, explore the profound changes to childhood that Haidt identifies, and examine his clear, actionable solutions for bringing our children back to Earth. To understand the crisis, we first have to look at the data. Around the year 2010, something changed. After decades of relative stability, rates of anxiety and depression among adolescents in the United States began to skyrocket. Between 2010 and 2020, the rate of major depression among teen girls increased by 145%. For boys, it was 161%. Rates of self-harm showed a similar, terrifying trend. Emergency room visits for self-harm for girls aged 10 to 14 nearly tripled. And tragically, suicide rates for that same group rose by 167%. Haidt meticulously demonstrates that this isn't just an American problem. The same alarming trends, the same hockey stick-shaped graphs, appeared at the same time across the Anglosphere. In Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, as well as in the Nordic countries. What could cause such a synchronized international collapse in youth mental health? Haidt dismisses common explanations like economic anxiety or climate change. He points out that teen mental health actually improved during the Great Recession of 2008 as unemployment fell. The timing simply doesn't fit. The one global event that perfectly matches this timeline is what he calls the Great Rewiring. The period between 2010 and 2015, when childhood was fundamentally transformed by the mass adoption of the smartphone and the rise of a new kind of social media. This was the moment the play-based childhood was definitively replaced by the phone-based childhood. Haidt argues this crisis stems from a catastrophic one-two punch that began decades earlier and culminated with the smartphone. The first mistake was the decline of a play-based childhood. Beginning in the 1980s, a culture of safetyism took hold in Western nations. Fueled by rising parental fears, we began systematically removing risk, autonomy, and unsupervised play from children's lives. We sanitized playgrounds, criminalized letting kids walk to the park alone, and filled their schedules with adult-supervised activities. In doing so, Haidt argues, we ignored a fundamental aspect of human development. Children are anti-fragile. Like the immune system, which needs exposure to germs to become strong, children need exposure to small risks, conflicts, and failures to develop resilience, competence, and confidence. Unsupervised, risky play is how children learn to manage fear, cooperate, and solve problems on their own. It is essential for shifting their brains from a default defend mode, a state of anxiety and threat detection, to a healthy, open, and curious discover mode. By overprotecting them in the real world, we have bred fragility and anxiety. The second mistake was the rise of the phone-based childhood. Just as we were confining children indoors, we handed them a portal to an entirely different universe, the virtual world. This new childhood is characterized by four features that are the opposite of real-world interaction. It is disembodied, mostly asynchronous, geared toward one-to-many broadcasting, and exists in fluid networks rather than stable communities. The transition was supercharged between 2010 and 2015. High-speed internet became ubiquitous. Smartphones, especially the iPhone 4 with its front-facing camera in 2010, made self-documentation effortless. And social media platforms evolved. With the introduction of the like and retweet buttons in 2009 and Facebook's acquisition of the visual platform Instagram in 2012, these services transformed from social networking tools to social media platforms designed for public performance and validation from strangers. This new phone-based childhood, Haidt argues, inflicts 4 foundational harms on all adolescents. First, social deprivation. Despite being more connected than ever, teens began spending drastically less time with their friends in person. Time spent with friends face-to-face plummeted, replaced by lower-quality, disembodied online interactions. This led to a historic spike in loneliness. Second, sleep deprivation. The glowing screens followed kids into their bedrooms, disrupting the production of melatonin and hijacking the precious hours of sleep that are vital for brain development, learning, and emotional regulation. Third, attention fragmentation. The constant barrage of notifications, pings, and alerts from dozens of apps has shattered the ability of young people to focus. Haidt compares it to the dystopian story Harrison Bergeron, where citizens are forced to wear devices that interrupt their thoughts every few seconds. This constant distraction interferes with the development of executive functions in their still-maturing frontal cortices. And fourth, addiction. Tech companies have perfected the art of persuasive technology, using behaviorist techniques like variable reward schedules to create compulsion loops that are nearly identical to those of a slot machine. Platforms are explicitly designed to hook users and maximize engagement, a process that can lead to genuine behavioral addiction. While these 4 harms affect everyone, they manifest differently across genders. Girls, Haidt shows, have been disproportionately harmed by the visual and performance-based nature of platforms like Instagram. Their social lives moved onto platforms that weaponized social comparison, trapping them in a vortex of perfectionism, unattainable beauty standards, and chronic anxiety about their social standing. Social media also became the perfect vector for relational aggression, gossip, and social exclusion, which is more common among girls. The tragic story of Alexis Spence, who developed an eating disorder and severe depression after being drawn into pro-anorexia content by Instagram's algorithm at age 11, serves as a harrowing case study. Boys, on the other hand, have followed a different, though equally concerning, path. Theirs is a story of gradual disengagement from the real world, from school, work, and relationships, and a deep withdrawal into the virtual worlds of multiplayer video games and hardcore pornography. These platforms offer a simulated and frictionless form of agency and sexual gratification, satisfying evolutionary drives without the need for real-world effort, risk, or social skill development. This, Haidt suggests, contributes to the growing failure-to-launch crisis among young men. The Anxious Generation is not a book of despair. Haidt argues that we are not helpless. We are caught in a series of collective action problems. No single parent wants to be the only one to deny their child a smartphone when everyone else has one. No single school wants to ban phones if the neighboring schools don't. The solution, therefore, must be collective. Haidt proposes 4 foundational reforms to end the experiment and bring childhood back to earth. No smartphones before high school. Give kids basic flip phones that allow for calls and texts, but delay access to the entire internet until they are at least 14. No social media before 16. Let adolescents get through the most vulnerable phase of puberty before exposing them to the fire hose of social comparison and algorithmic manipulation. Phone-free schools. Require students to store their phones in lockers or lockable pouches for the entire school day, from arrival to dismissal. This is the only way to free their attention for learning and for each other. Far more unsupervised play and childhood independence. We must reverse the culture of fear and give children back the freedom to explore, take small risks, and develop the anti-fragility they need to become confident and capable adults. Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation is a powerful, data-driven, and deeply humane call to action. It paints a stark picture of a generation set adrift by a technological and cultural revolution that happened too fast for anyone to comprehend. We inadvertently traded our children's play-based, real-world development for a phone-based existence, and the results, a historic epidemic of mental illness, are now impossible to ignore. But the book's ultimate message is one of hope. The problem is enormous, but the solutions are surprisingly simple and within our grasp. By working together as parents, schools, and communities, we can break free from the collective traps we've fallen into. We can restore a healthier, more human childhood, one that prepares children to thrive not on some distant virtual planet, but right here on Earth. If this summary has opened your eyes and you want to dive deeper into the research, the stories, and the comprehensive solutions Jonathan Haidt provides, we strongly encourage you to purchase The Anxious Generation. You can find a link to buy the book in the description below. Getting informed is the first step toward taking collective action. Thank you for joining us at the Library of Alexandria. If you found this summary valuable, please like, subscribe, and share it with other parents, educators, and anyone